In a nationwide broadcast earlier this week, Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo admitted that the country is facing an economic crisis. While speaking to Ghanaians, the president said that there will be a number of measures his government will take to see the country out of this financial turmoil. Hit hard by the global pandemic and the fallout of the Russia-Ukraine war, Ghana is seeking a $3 billion credit from the International Monetary Fund. Ghana faces 35% inflation, a sharp fall in the cedi, and high debt servicing costs. Joining me now is Emmanuel Dakwa. He's an economist and partner at CCAD Global. Emmanuel, it's good to have you back on the show. Thank you for joining me. And so let's go straight into this right now. We have a situation where Ghana seems to be grappling with runaway inflation. As the prices of its basic commodities have spiraled, government finances are at their weakest. The cedi is now the world's worst performing currency against the dollar. Emmanuel, how did Ghana get here?
Thank you very much, and a very good morning to viewers. There are a couple of reasons why we got here. There are external factors which is affecting all countries across the globe, i.e. the Russia-Ukraine war, which has disrupted supply chains and also led to financial crisis in most parts of the world. And also COVID-19, some countries have also not recovered. So there are exogenous factors. But domestically, what we have not done is for us to raise a lot of revenue. As I speak to you now, Ghana's tax to GDP is around 13%. But as a lower middle country, we should be doing close to about 22%. At the same time, expenditure has been ballooning. And as I speak to you now, budget deficits to GDP has been skyrocketing in double digits, which has also affected public debt. As I speak to you now, Ghana's public debt is around 400 billion Ghana cedis, which translates to about 80% of GDP. And so these are macroeconomic indicators that are not working well and that are not favoring the country. Again, inflation is at an all-time high at 37.2% for last month. Monetary policy rate, which also measures the lending rate in banks, also is at 24.5%. It has seen a hike since last year, November. And so these are the macroeconomic indicators that are not favoring Ghana's economy. Hence, government has had to opt for a bailout, which was announced on 1st of July 2022.
So we know Ghana is negotiating this loan agreements with the International Monetary Fund, but there could be a snag because the Washington-based lender has said that it needs to be sure that Ghana's 393.4 billion cedis debt is actually sustainable. If it's found to be unsustainable, the IMF is very likely not going to give Ghana this loan. So when you look at, of course, the issues around the loans and the credit facilities that the IMF has been signing in recent times and the potential for Ghana to go into restructuring and remedial action, do you think that Ghana will get the IMF credit facility?
Definitely Ghana will get, but it depends on what we do prior to the program being signed. And as you mentioned in your question, currently there's sustainability analysis that is ongoing. And the fund must be sure that Ghana will be able to amortize its debt, both to domestic and external creditors, before they approve the program. We are yet to see the outcome of the debt sustainability analysis, but I can tell you that it is likely that we are going to go on a debt restructuring before the program is approved. Because if you look at the volumes of debt, as I mentioned, 400 billion Ghana cedis and other components that are also being recorded. And so it is likely that there's going to be a domestic debt restructuring. But the most important question is, which category of debtors is it going to affect? Is it going to affect external or domestic? Whichever way, we should be able to do the analysis so that it doesn't also cascade in terms of the economic impact this debt restructuring will have on the economy, especially on domestic, debtors.
So you actually lead me into my next question, because during this nationwide broadcast, the president was trying to reassure the markets, and he basically said no individual or institutional investor will lose their money as a result of the ongoing IMF negotiations. But when you look at everything in front of Ghana and you look at what could be on the table, we know the IMF is going to ask if there's any form of subsidy that needs to be done, conversations between Ghana and its debtors as well. At the end of the day, can Ghana completely avoid no haircuts, which is exactly what the president said?
It's quite difficult at this moment. After the Sunday's broadcast, the president said that there will be no haircut. But subsequent to that, the Minister for Information, Honorable Kojo Nkrumah, in an interview said that his understanding is that there will be no haircut on principal, which means that in doing domestic debt restructuring, there are three options. One, you have to look at touching the principal. Secondly, on the interest, and then thirdly, on the maturity in terms of the tenor of that loan. So if the Minister for Information is saying that, per his understanding, the debt restructuring is not going to affect principal, it means that it might affect interest payments and also on maturity of bonds and treasury bill, which brings us, some of us analysts and economists, to some level of what we don't know where exactly it is going to affect in terms of the category of investors, whether household, whether institutional investors, even foreign investors who invest in our local bonds. So we are yet to see the outcome of the report for us to make the analysis. But as I speak to you now, the government has constituted a 5-member committee to look at the possibility of which of the category of investors this domestic debt restructuring could possibly affect, so that they can advise government on which of the options to adopt going forward before the program is finalized with the IMF.
So there's the potential of the domestic and international debt restructuring, but it's going to go beyond that. And in his speech, the president alluded to possible tough times ahead. He said that we can and we will find the means to achieve these goals, even if the immediate measures we have to take are painful. Emmanuel, what are some of these immediate measures that you think Ghanaians should brace up for?
Especially when we have signed up for a potential bailout program. What IMF programs typically do is that it comes to some level of austerity measures. And so I foresee that there will be cuts in some expenditures going into the medium term. But if that is going to help us restore macroeconomic stability, so be it. But the bigger question we have to ask ourselves is that Ghana has been going for IMF programs for the past 16 times. And this is our 17th bailout program we have applied. The big question is, why did we get here? It's because we have not been able to solve the perennial problems of Ghana's economy. Hence, when there are external shocks, it affects Ghana's economy for us to even apply for a bailout, as we can see. But I foresee that the tougher times that the president is predicting, of course, an IMF program is going to come with some cuts in expenditure, which will affect some sectors of Ghana's economy.
All right, Emmanuel, before I let you go, an IMF team is expected to visit Ghana in the coming weeks to continue negotiations with the authorities for this 3-year loan program. But as we've both agreed, Ghana is going to have to take some corrective measures as well. When it comes to that, what do you think happens next? This administration, Nana Akufo-Addo's administration, wants to tidy this up before the end of the year so it can kick into next year. Are you even very certain that the agreements with the IMF will lead to some form of macroeconomic stability once again for Ghana's economy? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. When you are on IMF program, it brings some level of stability, and the literature is there for us to see. I remember between 2015 and 2019, Ghana had to enjoy some level of macroeconomic stability because we are an IMF program. So it brings some level of certainty, even in the investment community. But beyond an IMF program, what do you do with the stability? And that is what Ghana has failed to do over and over again. Hence, we are opting for another bailout going into next year. But I believe that this is about time that we have to look beyond an IMF program, beyond macroeconomic stability. What are the perennial problems of Ghana's economy, i.e., revenues are low as compared to GDP. Expenditure has been ballooning. Public debt is on the rise. Ghana's economy is very largely import dependent. How do we solve these perennial problems so that we do not run to the IMF anytime that there are external shocks? And so these are things that should occupy our minds even as we sign up for a bailout program. Beyond the bailout program, what happens to Ghana's economy? What do we do with the stability in solving the problems that we have been facing since independence?
All right, Emmanuel, we'll leave the conversation there for now. It's one that we'll definitely continue to keep an eye on. West Africa's second largest economy, Nigeria's neighbor. So we are all concerned with the stability of Ghana. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And the conversations continue on Business Edge. It's said that when a butterfly beats its wings somewhere in the world, there's a tsunami. And that might just be exactly what the U.S. Federal Reserve is bringing about with its decision to raise interest rate hikes once again. When we come back after this quick timeout, what that decision means for African economies. Stick around.